got a bunch that's a little bit different.
Hey everybody, today is a very special day on the Unbeatable Podcast. Yes, you've guessed it, it's International Women's Day. But today I get a chance to talk to an incredible woman. Now, when you hear her last name, if you're a little bit older, you're going to immediately recognize this last name. Lindy Boone is the daughter of the world famous Pat Boone. But Lindy's got a story all her own. And in fact, what Lindy has gone through and the way that she's helping other people live through what she's gone through is going to encourage you. So I'm ready to just roll up the sleeves and get right into this interview with my guest today, Lindy Boone.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Hey, Lindy. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for joining me today.
I almost said, well, same to you, but that wouldn't work.
Yeah, that doesn't work on my end, but I'll take it anyway. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Today is a very special day for you, and we're going to talk about why March 8th is such a significant day for you, because your single is going out today.
Yes.
But we've got a little bit of work to do to get there.
Okay.
I want people to know how the daughter of a very, very famous and very successful musician has gone through some intense tragedies. And now you're using your experience to help other people. God forbid they ever go through what you've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So can we start the conversation today by introducing a lot of the audience to your father, Pat Boone? You are, of course, Lindy Boone. And many people who are my age or older know exactly who your father is, but I'm an older guy now. I'm a grandparent. There's lots of folks never heard your father's name before. They don't know the influence that your father's had like you and I do. So can you describe a little bit about what life was like growing up as Pat Boone's daughter?
Yes. You know, when you grow up involved in a famous family, it just seems normal because that's the only world you know. Yeah, you grow up and people recognize your dad everywhere you go. So that was normal. We felt like there was something unique a little bit about, everybody knows who my dad is. He would get recognized anytime we were out in public.
Grocery stores, filling the car up with gas, everywhere you went, right?
Wherever we went.
Yeah.
And because he was just all over the place on TV, he had a lot of hit records. He was a peer of Elvis Presley. So a lot of people don't realize that at the beginning of both their careers, they came up at the same time. And at one point there would be an Elvis #1 on the charts, and then it would be Pat Boone, and then it would be Elvis Presley. And they toggled back and forth quite a bit. In their hit records, all within, a several year period. So they both kind of vied for the same teenage girl audience. And Elvis was the dangerous one, and my dad was the one you'd bring home to meet the parents. Yeah. So very wholesome. And so we just grew up in Beverly Hills on the corner of Beverly Drive and Sunset Boulevard, right across the street from the Beverly Hills Hotel. And there were just always the tour buses, the movie star buses.
Oh, everybody wanted to drive by and take pictures of Pat Boone's house, of course.
Yeah. So that's what it was like. But we were really grounded. My folks were from Tennessee. They met. They were childhood sweethearts. And they met in high school. And so they had a certain kind of family values that they wanted to instill, even though we lived in this entertainment industry and in a very affluent part of Beverly Hills, or Beverly Hills is affluent. But they gave us chores, and we had lots of routine, and family and church was always a big, huge part of our lives to keep us grounded. Yeah.
Okay, I got to ask a couple of questions. This is just personally for my information. I've had a chance to get to work with Billy Graham's grandson, get to know Billy Graham's son a little bit. And I asked him the same questions that I want to ask you. When you were growing up, a little girl in the front yard turning cartwheels, there are tour buses that are taking photos, and you really can't go anywhere with your parents without people stopping and wanting to snap a photo or get an autograph. I asked some of the Graham family this, and my family's been in those circumstances where they've said, no matter where we go, people stop you, Jeff, and they want to take your autograph, and we're just trying to have a family meal. So was it ever challenging for you as a little girl to say, I want my daddy to myself, but no matter where we go, everybody else wants a piece of my daddy at the same time?
Good question, but my answer is sincerely, I think we liked it.
Really? Yeah.
I think it made us feel good that he was loved, and people, um, at times it got a little difficult to break away. People want to talk because my dad had such a down home persona.
Yeah.
People, felt very friendly towards him, and he was very friendly back. So to be able to get him free, so it was time to pay the check and leave. Sometimes it took a little bit of doing.
Yep.
But he was so polite, and I think that rubbed off on all of us, that he was warm and friendly to people. Folks were folks, he wasn't
Yeah.
better than them. He was always, kind and interactive. So I think that kind of is who we all became, because that's the way he treated it. But he was always there for us too. He never neglected um, alone time too at
Yeah.
home. So, mhm.
Lindy, your parents are very rare individuals, because most of the time, people that reach that level of superstardom, and I'm not using, I'm not embellishing the term. Your father in the 60s, 70s, even, early 80s was still very much a worldwide known name.
Yes,
And most of the time that inevitably goes to their head, and people start to think, well, I am a pretty big deal, so people need to treat me like a big deal. It's very rare for somebody to remain humble and personable at your father's when they reach your father's level of success and stardom. So wow, what an example you had growing up and living in that home. And I know there's some folks that are listening right now and saying, oh, she grew up in Beverly Hills and her father was a superstar. And of course, they had money falling out of the trees, which means you never, ever have a problem in life, right? Because that's what most people in our minds have built up. When you have that kind of fame and power and money and success, nothing in life can ever touch you. And your
right.
story is exactly the opposite. So let's get into early adulthood, parenting, and then I'd like you to just go ahead and take over at this point and talk about raising Ryan and losing Ryan.
Hmm. Well, um, first, when you said losing Ryan, I'm going to stop there and say he's with us.
Of course, yes. Thank you for
He's
the
different.
correction. Right.
He's different. Yeah. Um, yeah, we grew up singing as a family, so we were part of the entertainment business, but we also traveled together as a family. We were kind of like the real life Partridge Family.
Really?
Went on.
You did. You were
Oh
all in
yeah,
the bus traveling together.
we did. We traveled the
I
world.
love this. Yeah.
Yeah, we performed together because my dad was going to Japan on a tour, and his opening act was the Osmond Brothers. And on that tour, we were all, becoming teenagers all of a sudden. I was 13, and I'm the second one, and we're all very stair-step. So 14, 13,
Uh-huh.
12, and 11. And and my mother had taught us to sing, just to harmonize, and we loved singing together. And so he took us on that tour and gave us a couple songs and did a family show with the Osmonds. And that took us into doing that. It went very well. And so we ended up doing it around the country and in other countries. We recorded a lot. So my teenage life was in regular school, private school, but
Uh-huh.
taking our classes and then traveling and singing. As long as our grades were up, we were allowed to do it. And we had fun, but we had the protection of being with our parents. And so it just was a very idealized kind of situation. We
Yeah.
loved it. I'm friends with my sisters, very good friends. So then we branched off and started getting married, having kids. I was the first one to get engaged, but the second one to get married. Cherry leapfrogged over and got married 2 months before I did. And I was the first one to have a child. So I had the first grandchild, and Ryan was the first. And out of our family, my dad always joked around how he wanted a son, but he ended up with 4 daughters. And I just had a boy right off the bat and said, I don't think it was so hard. So Ryan was just very special, first grandchild, my first child, and a boy. So everybody was doting on him.
I was just going to say the first, not just the first grandchild, but the first boy in the family must have
Yeah.
been everywhere that he went and everything that he did. Everybody was tripping over themselves, right?
Yeah, and he was really cute.
Yeah.
So, and then I had Jesse after that, 17 months later. So I had my boy, I had my girl. I did go through a sad time of divorce during my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up married again, 30 years old, and married my husband, who I'm married to now. And we've been married 38 years.
All right.
Yeah. And I'm very good friends with my first husband, Doug. So we kind of, the 3 of us parented Ryan and Jesse. We added to the family, I had Tyler, my youngest, and everything was a charmed existence in my life. I just had so much love and so much just provision. We just got to travel. I got to sing in another singing group for a while, and that was so rewarding. I was a fitness instructor for about
Really?
25
Yeah.
years. That was
All
what I
right.
did.
Come on, Lindy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My dad got me into being an exerciser. And then later when I wasn't singing, I realized, oh, you mean as a fitness instructor, I get to move, have music, have a microphone, and be up front?
It's perfect
I
for
can
you,
do
right?
that.
Yeah.
So I did that for a long time and sang in another singing group. And I just was so happy. We had a wonderful life. And then when I was 45 years old, tragedy hit. And Ryan had gone to Pepperdine University. He was 24 years old and ready to venture out into a career of his own. He wanted to write and direct movies, TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had such a creative, he graduated from Pepperdine, a telecommunications major.
Wow.
And he had already written one screenplay. And his first screenplay, he wanted to get that written before he went and found a job. And it was called 316. And it was impressive. It was way too long. People were telling him, this is too long. But he was basically rewriting the story of Jesus from the book of John into modern day.
Yeah.
And making it more current what if Jesus came now? And it was really creative. And so he'd worked on that. And then he was ready to get a job working in the industry. He got engaged. So we were looking forward to his wedding. And that was 6 months away when Mike and I and our youngest son, Tyler, who was 13 at the time, we went on our vacation together to Spain, the 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
We were staying at a timeshare, and I got a wake-up call at 5 a.m. It was my sister, Debbie. And I braced myself because why in the world is she calling me?
Your heart's got to be jumping out of your chest
5
before you
a.m.
even hear anything from your sister, right?
Exactly. And she told me, Lindy, it's Ryan. He's had an accident. It's not a car accident. She said he fell. And she kept talking, and she said he was on the roof of his apartment building and he stepped on a skylight and it broke and he fell. Well, I knew it was a 3-story building.
Wow.
And it was over an atrium. And she said he's at UCLA Medical Center and he has a skull fracture and his spleen burst.
Oh. And
she goes, but you can live without a spleen. But she said, right now, that's all I know. And everything in my stomach. This was a physical reaction. Everything cramped up. I just felt pain in my stomach. And I was trying to process what she was saying because I was on the other side of the
world.
planet.
Yeah.
Yes. It wasn't like I could hop in the car and race to him. My husband and I and Tyler, we joined hands, we prayed. Because I was very, very grateful at that moment that prayer transcends time and space.
Time and space, absolutely, yeah.
And I knew that I could be with Ryan via prayer, and God was with Ryan. But then we went to work figure out how we were going to get on a plane. 3 flights later, 24 hours later, we got to him at UCLA Medical Center.
Can I
And
pause you for a second, Lindy?
yes,
You're
sure.
describing right now, for most parents, their worst nightmare.
Yes.
Most parents, a knock on the door at 2:00 in the morning, the phone ringing at 2:00 in the morning, and somebody saying it's your child is the worst thing that they could ever imagine. And not getting to the hospital and seeing with your own eyes what's going on. I just can't help but think of what was on your heart, what was going through your mind. You just described these 3 flights that it took to get to see Ryan. And of course, your mind is racing to all of the worst case scenarios. Can you just describe for people what those flights, the torture that those flights were like, just trying to get to UCLA Medical Center to see him?
It's a really good question. I didn't know how detailed you wanted me to be, but that was literally, it was a gradual understanding of how serious it was, because first I didn't know, but I knew I needed to get home.
Yeah.
Then we could call from, we got on the plane from Malaga to Madrid, and we got off and I could call and reach Debbie. She knew a little more. Oh, they're trying to get a CAT scan, but he's on a ventilator.
Oh, man.
And when they try to take him off the ventilator to get a CAT scan, they end up turning him back and bringing him back to get him back on the ventilator. And then I realized, oh my gosh, he's clinging to life.
Yeah, ventilator means he's on life support and not good, right?
Yes. And they can't even tell what damage was done because they can't get to the CAT scan.
Yeah.
And so then we got on a plane. This was the longest leg of the flight. It was from Madrid to Miami. And that was an 8-hour flight. And during that flight, and after what I heard in Madrid, I felt so antsy and so like I might melt down in front of everybody, because nobody else on the plane realized that the world just stopped.
Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, you're
stood
holding the
still.
weight of the world on your shoulders, and everybody else is just going
I'm
through
watching
a
the movie and
vacation.
eating. I'm just,
Yeah.
And so I realized the two things, that they didn't have a problem. Don't you realize what's happening to Ryan right now? I mean, it really was hard to deal with. And something popped into my head that I needed a pen and paper. I needed to write.
Really?
That I just started saying, honey, I need some paper.
Yeah.
I need paper, and I don't have a pen. I don't have paper. A flight attendant got me a pen. I mean, I was really kind of panicked. And Mike found his briefcase, pulled out some papers and flipped it over so I could write on it. And I started pouring out my heart with all the emotions. And I still have that piece of paper from that flight. But it was just the stream of thought going through my head. And one of the things that I do recall, and I have it written down, it was more of a prayer than anything. But I just was talking to God and said, please don't let this pain be for no reason. And that's how I felt. I thought, this is going to be excruciating. Do something with it that makes good come out of it, and teach me what I need to know from it. So I journaled after that for the first time in my life. I've never been somebody that kept a diary or a journal, but I mean, for a year and a half, I realized that was a really excellent way to process what was going on, and also to mark what happened so I wouldn't forget.
Well, I was sitting there thinking, I've never been through the situation that you've been through, but I have talk to other people who have, and the sense of total helplessness. First, I don't even know what's really happened, and I don't know what his condition is. I'm just getting bits of information. And secondly, it's already happened. I'm on the other side of the globe. There's nothing that I can do to change what's happened, but I got to get to my baby, to my son. And the total sense of helplessness on that airplane really will drive you crazy. Or if you're a man or woman of faith, it's going to drive you on your knees, figuratively, or maybe even, literally in a desperate prayer for help and hope. And I think it's fascinating.
And we landed in Miami, Jeff.
Yeah.
And Mike checked his voicemail messages, and this is just poignant. It's that all of a sudden, all these messages back then, this was in 2001, and people weren't getting phone calls as easily
Yeah. Right.
overseas.
Uh-huh.
All the phone messages started flooding into his phone. And it happened to have been Father's Day over the time we were in Spain. And Ryan had left him this lengthy, long message of gratitude,
Oh, that's
being
beautiful.
the best
Yeah.
stepdad. And it was beautiful, but we were also just like trying to
Yeah.
get to him. It was amazing that moment of hearing his voice, and just the way he was. He was just that kind of kid that was always demonstratively loving and able to express that love
Yeah.
beautifully.
Well, obviously, the listener is hearing no matter how powerful, no matter how rich, no matter how famous your family is, it doesn't protect anyone from going through tragedies. And now you're in Miami, you're making your way to UCLA. What do you
Hmm.
see when you get to the hospital?
My sister Debbie picked us up, drove us right to UCLA, and led us to the waiting area. And then they came and got me. And as much as I was frantic to get to him, I had to I had to make myself go through those doors into the
Really?
ICU.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to see what I
Yeah.
saw. And he was in a coma. He was swollen from having fallen so far and
Mm.
hitting concrete. His eye was all red, bloodied from he had a fracture in the occipital area.
Up in the front of the
And
skull was what you're
yeah,
saying. Yeah.
right, frontal lobe.
Wow.
He had tubes everywhere because his lungs had also collapsed. I didn't know it until later, but his heart had also
Oh, my
stopped.
goodness.
He had fractured ribs. He had hit railings on the different floors going down, which maybe slowed his fall, maybe saved his life. It's those fractures, the spleen had burst. He just had tubes supporting everything and a ventilator. And they had a neck brace on because they were suspicious of a spinal cord injury. Turned out it wasn't a spinal cord injury, but every part of his body was swollen from the impact. So it was hard to recognize Ryan, but that was Ryan. And tubes to alleviate the swelling in his brain. So it was, I think we protect ourselves. We don't really take it all in. We see it. We hardly can believe
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not in a dream.
Yeah.
And that starts to become real over time as your psyche can take
Uh-huh.
it. But he drove us to the airport and dropped us off just days
Yeah.
before. So it was hard to imagine that this was happening.
What does the future look like? What happens next for Ryan? And then I want to talk about you and how you, as a mother, and you guys led your family through this. But what happens next to Ryan's health, and how long does it take, and what's it like for him now?
Well, I didn't know much about brain injury until this happened to
Hmm.
Ryan. And brain injuries come in all shapes, sizes, and durations. And his was very
Yeah,
serious. It
about as
was,
severe as you can get, right? Without
yeah,
actually costing him his life.
right.
Yeah.
And he was on the life support, and he was in an induced coma, which they said a medically
Yeah.
induced coma. So they could let his brain swelling go down. So they were watching all the numbers on all the monitors. And at one point, they thought they might have to do dialysis because his kidneys were
Oh, man.
traumatized as well. So they were preparing us for that, but it didn't end up all of a sudden. Everything started to get better there. But over 2 weeks, we just kept a vigil, and everything was in limbo, and it continued to be for longer than that. But after 2 weeks, they took us into a meeting with the doctors and our whole family, and just said, Ryan looks to be in a vegetative state. Looking at his brain, it looks like the bridge is down between the right and the left hemisphere. Something called the corpus callosum was severed, and there wouldn't be communication between the two sides of his brain. And they said, we don't know that there'd be any meaningful function if he lives, and we're giving you the opportunity to decide whether to keep him on life support.
Wow.
And so that was one of the toughest meetings, and we didn't deliberate about it. We said, no, you're the medical team, and we want you to do everything within your power to help Ryan
Yeah.
medically. We are a family of faith, and we believe in prayer, and we will pray and let God decide what's going to happen with Ryan. And that was maybe one of the very low days in the early days, but it was still just the beginning, just the beginning. And he was at UCLA for 6 to 7 weeks in the ICU, and he was still in a coma, and they realized they had to move him to a subacute facility because he was going to be in a
Yeah, he's going to
state
be
for a
there
while.
for a long time, right?
Right. So they moved us to somewhere with a lower level of care, closer to where we lived. We live in Orange County, California. And over the next 10 months, he was in 6 different facilities
Oh,
because
man.
the subacute facility ended up, he had complications. He had pneumonia, and he had something called brainstorming, which took his autonomic system just on a roller coaster
Really?
ride where
Wow.
he'd go through episodes of fast-paced breathing, profuse sweating, grinding his teeth, posturing, which meant his body went into
Yeah.
weird contortions.
Uh-huh.
Everything that is normally just automatic was wildly fluctuating, and it risked his life. And they had to move him in the middle of the night when his fever reached 106, and he was severely dehydrated. So we went through these kind of emergencies after the
Oh,
initial
man.
emergency. And he ended up then at Mission Hospital, and they kept him for several months. We moved to St. Jude Hospital, where they had a neuro program, and he made some progress there to where they said he's not in a coma anymore. And we started to see signs. But the first sign that we saw that he could respond, he was still in a coma. They would sit him up in a chair, no expression on his face. But his dad came in and told us in the waiting room one day, he goes, "Ryan just kissed me." This is at 4 months after the accident. Said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "I kissed him on the cheek," and he turned his head and he kissed my cheek. And it was so exciting. All of us went and lined up, and we all were ready for a kiss. Now, the doctor said he was still in a coma, but it was a happy day
Wow.
in our family that it's okay, it's a kiss. And he did it in response to a kiss. And that was the first thing. He started to take a little bit of food on a spoon. First was my daughter's finger, and she put chocolate pudding on her finger and said, "Ryan, chocolate." And he actually took the pudding and just swallowed. And that was another responsiveness, no expression on his face. But we had these wonderful milestones that kept us going when we would get so discouraged. And then one new thing would happen and keep us going another couple months. And then at 7 months, somebody heard a word, like just breathing a word,
Really?
and told me about it. And I didn't hear it for a while still, but he started to mouth words, one word at a time. Like he could say, and I knew it was mom, but he had no diaphragmatic strength to get any
Yeah.
air to pass through. So we had these little movements of his mouth. Then somebody held up a flashcard at about 8 months, and he could read the word on the flashcard, mouth it. So we were seeing some progress. We knew he was in there. And eventually we had an operation. He had to have an operation in the 10th month. And I walked into the ICU once again, and I saw the first smile come on his face. Up to
Wow.
10 months, there'd been no expression on his face. And he saw me and he smiled, and then it disappeared. But I went calling a nurse, "Nurse, nurse." And they thought something bad had happened. I said, "It's good. I need a witness.
Yeah.
Come in before it's gone." And so the thing that I realized with brain injury, if you see it once, you'll see it again. I
Oh,
believe
yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's actually factually true, but with Ryan, if I saw something happen, I knew it would happen again. And before long, we were getting smiles every day. And then we were getting laughter, which allowed me to hear a hint of his voice, and longer flashcards and bigger
Yeah.
bites of food. And so it was very painfully slow, I have to say. But we did get to move him home after 10 months, 6 different facilities. We had nursing care around the clock, not just
Uh-huh.
caregivers, but nurses at first. He came home with IV, And but we adjusted to having a daytime caregiver and a nighttime caregiver.
Uh-huh.
And that's been our lives. We moved to a bigger house shortly after because we had like a revolving
Sure.
door of therapies and caregivers, and just needed to spread out a little bit. I heard his voice for the first time after 15 months. It's a
Really?
longer
Wow.
than a year, where
Yeah.
we got signs that he was in there, but he didn't have the strength to get sound. And when we heard his voice for the first time, these were the things that kept us going. And then we got rid of the feeding tube at a little over 20 months later. So we were squirting food into his feeding tube as
Oh
this
man.
for almost 2 years. So the victory along the way kept us going. It was still very hard to see him in a wheelchair and to see, that he couldn't really speak freely. It was slow, but that's the way brain injury can be. People can wake up and start talking right away, or depending on where the brain injury is and what's affected, it can be very slow. So we were delighted because we were told
Yeah,
in
you were told that he was basically you need to think about pulling him off of life support and you're
right,
never going to have your son back.
right.
Yeah.
And we started seeing him come back. Yeah.
Yeah, and those little victories make all of the struggles, and the hard days worthwhile.
Yes.
When you were talking, there was two ladies that come to mind. I've done episodes with Jill Stevenson, who her son was shot in Afghanistan, showed up to the hospital in a with no brain activity, and she had to make the courageous decision to remove him from life support and harvest all of his organs. I have the greatest respect for Jill Stevens. She is a woman that I have immense respect for. But a couple of months after her, I interviewed a friend of mine named Jody Izzo, and Jody's husband was in a motorcycle accident without a helmet, suffered a major brain injury. And when I compare what Jody went through to what Jill went through, Jill lost her son in a matter of a few days. Jody's husband eventually passed away after years of slowly going downhill. She never got a chance to see him, have any real cognitive abilities after this motorcycle accident. And she stayed faithfully by his side and took care of him until his dying day. But for Jody's husband, Roman, it was years of going downhill. And I think to myself, I would never want to be in your shoes, Jody's shoes, Jill's shoes. But to lose a son in a moment is one thing. To lose a husband or a son, in this slow degenerative process is, man, it's brutal. And I don't know how anybody finds the strength to go through that except for through supernatural help. And I've got a lot of respect for you and your family for what you've been through, just staying by Ryan's side and, nursing him and caring for him.
Yeah. Well, he has made much more progress than they ever thought that he would. He's healthy and he is communicative. He has some severe brain injury
Yeah,
behavior, to be honest. If we take him out in public, there's a lot of cussing, and it's only because he's in fight or flight.
sure.
His brain puts him in fight or flight when he
Yeah.
sees another man. He's fine with women. But that started 2 years after his accident, and
Uh-huh.
I couldn't figure out what is going on. And a neuropsychologist, followed him around for a day and learned about him, that I could tell him about Ryan. He goes, "Sounds like Ryan is an alpha male." And as an alpha male, he sees another man, and
Yeah.
there's a survival
Right.
instinct, and he can't flee. He's in a wheelchair. So what happens is it bypasses his frontal lobe, which was very damaged. That's slow up there. It moves slower, but that survival fight or flight is quick. It overpowers him. And so this guy that never was foul mouthed at all, and this is common with brain injury,
Sure. Yes.
but for him to react simply because if I introduced you and he didn't know you, he perceives a threat. So interestingly, we found some medication that helped us with that, but he would build a tolerance to it. It wouldn't
Yeah.
work forever. But we were very glad. I was very glad, as averse as I am to taking any kind of drugs. when cannabis became legal, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of edible chocolate has allowed us to be able to take him to church on Sunday
Yeah.
and to go to the movies on Friday. And if I need to lower his anxiety, I like that as a more natural solution
Sure.
than some of the pharmaceuticals
Yeah,
that
of course.
stop working after a while. So these are ways that we go out in community. He's very verbal, but he's different. So he's not, when you say I lost my son, I lost the Ryan that I knew on June
Yeah,
18th,
before the
2000.
accident. Yeah.
But I tell people the way I've coped with this is I can either live with that sense of losing Ryan of June 18th, or I can say he's come so far since June 20th.
Yeah.
Look at where he was and look at how he is now.
That is a great way of looking at it. You've described, I think, for most of us now, a little bit about what Ryan's real quality of life is like, what this is like for your family. But could you talk to parents that are saying, Lindy, you're going through my worst nightmare of a phone call in the middle of the night that says it's your son and we don't have a lot of details. And then when you get to the hospital, you realize everything about my future, all of my dreams, all of my hopes for my future have just changed. Not necessarily been shattered, not necessarily been taken away, but all that I thought about my future has changed. What would you say to some of those parents that have never received that phone call, but they don't know how they would work or handle it in a situation like you went through?
I think number one is I think I had that thought before anything happened to Ryan. I thought, I think I'm pretty easygoing. I can handle most things. Nothing really worries me unless something happened to one of my kids.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, you just have to lock me up and medicate me because I don't think I
Yeah.
could function. And what I would say is, you don't know how strong you are until you're met with something like this. There are choices to make, but we're stronger than we know. And you get up in the morning and you put one foot in front of the other because that's what you have to do. And there was so much unknown that I had to meet each day going into this fog of I'm not sure I can see much further past today. But I had a great family. I would lean on the people that are close to you and let them help you and feel all the feelings and
Yeah.
don't resist it and let them process through your body and have your cries. But it's amazing how once you have that cry, you can take a deep
All
breath,
right.
go back in that room and bring the love and bring the love medicine is really
Yeah.
intangible
Yeah.
and it's powerful. So I would say I tried to apply things about being very present in the moment and not try to worry too far down the road. And it's kind of like the AA prayer, the serenity prayer. Give
Hmm.
me the courage to change the things I can and accept I forget it right now. I'm going
Something
blank.
like the wisdom to,
To
yeah,
know the difference.
whatever.
Accept
Yes.
things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's very much like that.
Hmm.
And being able to breathe, take deep breaths, and just get quiet and get present. For me, it's prayer, but my prayer life changed. Of course, I was pleading with God to save him, but I think I also learned to just sit in the quiet and need to just me be quiet and me listen.
Wow. Yeah.
And I just found that when I did that, thoughts would pop into my head that I didn't necessarily think were my thoughts. Thoughts
Hmm.
like, write down what you have to be grateful for. And I thought, what do I have to
That's
be
not what's
grateful
going
for?
through most people's mind in your situation. Absolutely. Yeah.
But it was really, I said I was journaling, and that was one of the things I journaled, and I started to make a list. And when I started with just two things, like, I'm glad Ryan had his roommate with him when he fell so somebody could call 911. And I actually got to where I was glad I was far away because I needed the time before I stepped into the situation. And I would have brought nothing but fear into that situation. My mother, on the other hand, was 5 minutes away in Beverly Hills, and she was at that. She met the paramedic
Uh-huh.
who said, "Don't get your hopes up." And
Wow.
she just set up vigil in that waiting room, and she just went, "No, he's going to live. He
All
won't
right.
die."
Yeah.
And this was a scripture that went through her very trained mind. He will live and not die and declare the glory of God. And so she just sat there and waited in her faith, where I would have run in there in my fear.
Yeah. Wow.
So there are things
That is
that
profound.
I learned to be grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just said something that's a great piece of advice for all of us. Some of us will never, ever experience the kind of fear and the life-changing events that you're going through. But I think you've nailed it. One of the privileges of hosting this podcast is I get a chance to hear people recounting some of the most intense moments a human being will ever go through. And almost all of them have said a version of what you just said. You really don't know how strong you are until you're in the middle of it, and actually until you're on the other side of it. When you're in the middle of it, you're just reacting to
Being
what's
human. Yeah.
yeah, reacting to what's thrown your way. But on the other side of it, most of them would say, I didn't even believe that I was strong enough to handle this. And after the fact, I've learned some things about myself now in
Mm-hmm.
very terrible ways that I wouldn't wish on, any human
You
being
don't,
on earth, but I've
you
learned some
don't
things
sign up
about
for it.
myself.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Obviously, this impacted your life and your future. If I heard you correctly, Ryan's accident was early 2000s, 2001. Is that right?
That's one.
So 23 years ago, your life has been significantly changed by this. But I love the fact that you are still influencing people, still offering people hope. In fact, today, we said this at the beginning of the show, today you're dropping a brand new single. I want people to understand about your music career, but I really would love for you to be able to talk to them about the single that you're dropping today. Would you talk to them about Word Layer and what this means to you and what people can expect?
Definitely. I grew up singing with my sisters, as you know, and then I was in a singing group after that for many years and sang with three other women, just like when I used to sing with my three sisters. I wouldn't say I have an active singing career, but my sisters and I love to sing together still when we get the chance for either benefits or special occasions. But I was given a gift from my daughter on Mother's Day, 2020, and it was a chance to write a song with a Nashville musician.
All right.
She said, "Mom, Airbnb changed their model. They're not able to rent anything out. So they're putting things up like experiences you can buy on the internet on their platform." And she gave me this novel gift. And I had an appointment to write a song with somebody. And so I was thinking, what am I going to contribute? I have not written songs before. I've sung, I've performed, but I haven't been a songwriter. But the title popped into my head in a quiet moment. Like I say, I go and I get quiet with God. And a word layer came to my mind. It had been something I had thought of when I wrote my book. I had a book that came out in 2013. And word layer meant to me that we build our future with our words. And it's like a bricklayer laying the foundation or laying
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
path forward. And so word layer had this meaning to me. I thought that could be the title. So then I started writing down what word layer meant to me, and it came out as verses and a chorus. And
Really.
yeah.
You're a
And
natural.
you know what? It was a gift from my daughter, and I think a gift from above. And then when I sat down on the Zoom call with this lovely Nashville musician, Ann Buckle, she's also from the June Carter line of
Yeah. All right.
and
You guys
she's,
have some stories to tell, is what you were
yeah, we
saying.
chatted a bit before
I
we got
bet you
to work.
did.
And then between the two of us, she wrote the melody and she kept all my lyric. And it came out in this beautiful, I was so amazed. Nobody is more amazed than me that this song that came really from my lived experience It's like the new perspective that I have in my life after living this with Ryan. There's phrases in the song about death unto life. Look at nature, how she cycles death to life. Life returns. So our words have something to do with what that life is going to look like. And so I love this song. I love the melody. And then I got to go into a Nashville studio and record it with my sisters. And we
Oh,
haven't
this is
been together
awesome.
in a long
Yeah.
time. And they brought the harmonies. And what resulted from that record session has blessed me so much. And I've been able to play it for people, but it hasn't been released to the public yet.
So today is the big day. Drum
Yeah,
roll. It's
yeah.
released today.
But I know that it impacts people.
Yeah.
And I am honored to have anything to do with it. So
Yeah.
I can't wait for people to hear it.
What a beautiful gift your daughter gave you.
Yes.
What a gift from God to be able to put your heart into words. And what do you want people to experience? I don't mean what do you want them to hear, but what do you want them to feel when they listen to the song for the first time?
Boy, that's a good, deep question. What do
Uh,
I want them to feel? I want them to feel that we have a choice. We have a choice of how we impact the others around us. And we make a choice about what we say. And a lot of times we just blurt things out. But during my time with Ryan, I was learning to be very intentional with what I said. And I hope people realize the choice is yours. And I hope they feel calmed and that the words are hope. They're
yeah.
hope and encouraging.
I'm hoping that when people listen to Word Layer the first time, they come away saying, listen, now that I know a little bit about Lindy's story and what she's been through and how she's still handling it, if she's got the strength to handle it, then I can find the strength to handle whatever comes my way. And I hope that they do find hope in this song. Okay, so where do people go to listen to it? If they want to hear it as soon as this episode is over with, where can they go hear it?
I hear it's going to be on the streaming platforms
All
wherever you
right.
get your music. So I would hope you can just find it, Google it,
So they
Spotify,
can go out
whatever.
to Spotify, Apple
Yeah,
Music, all of the streaming platforms.
yeah.
Do they search for the title Word Layer? Is that the best way to find the
And
song?
it's one word, not two
All
words.
right.
Word
So
layer.
they go out there and look for Word Layer. If
Yep, and
you're listening to
Lindy
this, yeah, one word, Word Layer. If you're listening to this while you're driving, when we get done with this episode, we're going to put a link to Lindy's information. You can find out more about her. But we want everybody to go out and listen to this song. Go to YouTube, go to Apple Music, go to Spotify, your favorite streaming platform,
Boone.
and go
A
type in.
website. Also, I want to give my website if I
Sure.
could.
Yes.
Ryan's Reach, ryansreach.com.
Ryan's Reach. We're going to put that in the notes to this episode too. If you're driving, ryansreach.com. But if you're pulling up on your favorite streaming platform right now, Word Layer is a one word song title. Go look for it. Listen to it. In fact, why don't you just go ahead and download it? Yeah, turn it up while you listen to it. We want this to become the number one single on the planet. We want Lindy to take over the spot of Taylor Swift with this song. So go ahead and tell all your friends about the song too.
We're laying that word down.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. There is a lot more that I would love to talk to you about, a lot more that I would love to hear about you, about your family. But I want to just tell you, thank you, Lindy, for giving me a little bit of time, especially today on, like I said, International Women's Day, but also on the day that your single is dropping. And I hope a lot of people do listen to this. I hope it touches their heart and they walk away with hope for themselves and their future. Is there other ways that people can find you on social media?
I have a Facebook page, Lindy Boone, and an Instagram, Lindy Boone Music. And there's a Ryan's Reach page as well on both of those.
We'll put all of those social
Because
media
we
links in.
started a nonprofit in Ryan's name.
Awesome.
Right.
We'll put all of those in the notes to this. Before we wrap up and I let you go, tell everybody about the nonprofit, what it is, and what you do with it.
Sure. We realized that because my dad is who he is and is a celebrity, and we were on Larry King Live 5 different times after Ryan's accident. He
Wow.
highlighted Ryan's story. And so the world was sending us emails and praying for Ryan and wanted to know how he was doing. And we started Ryan's Reach because we realized we were uniquely able to bring awareness to brain injury. So we started to help and support High Hopes Head Injury Program in Tustin. There's a great day program there for people with TBI. And then over time, we realized that there needed to be group homes. There really were not hardly any group homes for people with TBI. They would take a young person with a TBI and maybe place them in a home for the elderly. So we've started 2 group homes that are uniquely geared for people that are between 18 and 60 to live in a group home. And they all have brain injuries, but it's been the most rewarding work of my
Yeah.
life to help people, other families, TBI survivors and their families.
Yeah.
You can
What
look
is
us up.
what's the name of the nonprofit again?
Ryan's Reach.
Is the
And
name of the
so,
nonprofit?
yeah, Ryan's Reach.
Yes.
Hmm.
I want to say to the audience, almost everybody in the audience that's connected to the military, you know somebody who has gone through some type of brain injury. I don't know anybody who doesn't know somebody who's gone through some kind of brain injury. And maybe it's not happened to you personally. Maybe you just want to make a difference. If you want to make a donation and you're looking for a good charity to donate to that's making a difference, why don't you just go ahead and make a donation to Ryan's Reach? Because you've heard now from Lindy what they're doing to help people that have gone through brain injuries. And there are many of them in the military as well as in every other walk of life. So thank you for what you're doing there, Lindy.
Well, that is my joy and it's part of my healing
Yeah.
too. So my pleasure.
Thank you for being on this episode.
This is a
Yeah.
great podcast.
But man, I have been looking forward to hearing your story, and I am going to go listen to Word Layer as soon as I can. So thank you for being on this episode with
Thank
me.
you. I appreciate it.
As I listen to Lindy tell her story, it's become clear to me this woman is living proof. You don't really know how strong you are until you find yourself in circumstances that you never imagined being in. And like Lindy, you just get up every day and you handle the challenges of the circumstances that you're in. So I hope that you never have to go through what she is going through. But if you do, I hope this episode has given you a lot of encouragement to say, if she can find the strength to go through it, then I can find the strength to go through it. I just want to say thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to this incredible story. And if you just heard this podcast for the first time, like maybe you just stumbled across it on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? Because we've got incredible guests with stories just like this week after week that will give you the strength that you need to handle whatever's coming along tomorrow. We've got an amazing community of people that are connected together on social media. If you want to find that community, if you want to get connected to that community, just search for @Unbeatable Podcast on any of the social media channels. And while you're out there, you're going to run into our fan of the week this week. This is Anna Manning. Anna, thank you for staying so connected to us. Thank you for being so encouraging on social media. We want everybody to know you're awesome. That's why you're the fan of the week this week. And the final, and perhaps maybe the most important way for you to stay connected with us is to go ahead and join what we call the Unbeatable Army. The Unbeatable Army is our list where I send out email content directly to your inbox. We'll give you some freebies. We'll give you some promotional material. We'll give you updates before stuff comes out, but we'll also send you content that will keep you energized, keep you motivated, and help you face whatever is coming your way tomorrow. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Unbeatable, and I'll see you right back here next week. God bless.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.